What's going on, guys? Thanks for joining me this week for another video. So this week, as you could probably guess from the title, we're going to be talking about words, but more specifically definitions. And I'm going to kind of unpack some of these words and the definitions and focus on certain words within these definitions. So if you're interested to find out more, please stay tuned and let's get into this. All right, so let's get into this. The words I'm gonna bring up, I have a list here. I'm gonna bring these up, and then I'm gonna kind of show you the definitions, and then we'll focus on some of the words within these definitions. So, wisdom, courage, strength or strong, serenity, peace, reliable, freedom, and honest. Now, what do you think of? What comes to mind when you hear these words? You're like, man, those are good qualities to have. I'd like to have some of those, or I'd like to experience some of those. You know, you'd like to experience wisdom, you'd like to be more wise, or I'd like to have more courage, or I'd like to have more reliable people around me. Or are you thinking to yourself, man, I got most of those qualities. Those are pretty good. I got most of those qualities. Whatever it might be, wherever you land, know that I'm gonna dissect this a little bit, and hopefully we can all learn something. So let's start right at the top. Wisdom. The words I want to focus on for this definition is experience, knowledge, and good judgment. So when we think about wisdom, we think about lived experience, things that you've been through, things that you've known, like landmines per se, that you've, say, stepped on and learned from and recovered from. And you know, that's how you've become wise. You know, okay, so that was a bad decision, or that was a good decision. That panned out really well. You know, maybe there was no landmine. But see, what us as a society tends to do, and I know you guys have seen this in the news, you know, people like changing names of like sports teams and branding for like syrup and stuff like that because it had like negative things and, you know, negative associations and whatnot. So we have to be careful when we do this, because lived experience is how we gain wisdom, right? We gain wisdom by experience and by knowledge, knowing what we know now and going through what we've gone through. Okay, we can now say this was good and this was bad. But see, what society as a whole, what we're seeing on the news is people are trying to change textbooks now, remove things that are like history based to try to teach people something different, which is very, 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 very detrimental, because we are changing stuff that happened in history to try to make it, you know, suit us, our own opinions, right? Because we're like, hey, we don't like what that history book says, so we're going to change it so that we could teach people what we'd like it to say. We've got to be careful, because wisdom comes from experience and knowledge and good judgment. So we make society wise by teaching them where we came from, our history, the correct history. We show them, hey, these were landmines that we as a society, as a country, as a nation, like, this is what happened back in the day. Was it good? No. Are we there like currently? No. Have we learned from it? Yes. We've gotten better. We've done better. There's now rules and policies in place to prevent these things from happening again. That's how you become wise, right? But we have to keep that stuff in history there so that we can learn from our mistakes, so that the kids growing up, the people coming up after us, the generation coming up after us knows the mistakes that were made and how we learned from them, how we overcame those, and how we got better. That's how you make a better society. Not by covering it up and trying to pretend it never happened. So let's jump down. Let's keep going. Courage. Frightens, strength in the face of pain or grief. Now realize that in this definition alone of courage, that pain and grief is part of that. Which means you can't have courage without experiencing pain and grief. Now, I know pain and grief is uncomfortable, and nobody really wants to go through that. But you can't develop courage without experiencing pain and grief, because it's kind of like it goes hand in hand. Like, you develop the courage from going through that. So we have to keep in mind that the bad things that happen, whether they're bad because of either a decision we've made, or just bad because wrong place, wrong time, or not even that, is just not even wrong place, wrong time, but I mean, like, you could be at home, something bad happens, like completely minding your own business. So we can develop courage in the face of that. So courage would not exist without the pain. So just kind of keep that in mind. Strength or strong. Very vocal bird, huh? Capacity for exertion or endurance. Power to resist force. So endurance, which means you have to withstand something. You have to go through something and push through something. And the power to resist force. So you don't develop strength. You don't develop this power to resist force by avoiding things. By excluding yourself from like certain situations that will strengthen yourself either emotionally or physically. Like, physically, you can't go to the gym and build muscle and become stronger by not exercising, by not lifting weights, by not kind of pushing yourself to stretch yourself a little bit more outside of your comfort zone, because physically, like, you lifting these heavy weights, I mean, in the beginning, you're going to be like, oh, wow, like, my arm is sore. Push through that. So emotionally, we're also experiences, whether it's breakups, whatever the case may be, just hurts. People said something to us that either they intended to or didn't, but you can't develop the strength and the resiliency without having gone through that. So just know that, strength comes from being pushed. I guess this bird wants to be in my video, so maybe I should interview him. Serenity. Peaceful and untroubled. Now, I'm going to bring up the definition of peace here in a little bit, but I want to focus on untroubled, because you cannot have the definition of serenity without untroubled. So you can't be serene without first knowing what's not serene, which is having trouble and experiencing trouble. Notice the theme that I'm going through here. You cannot experience calm without first knowing what panic is or chaos is, because then you have something to kind of offset it and compare it to. Peace, disturbance, and there is no war. So disturbance, right? You got something that's ruffling or creating some sort of noise or chaos, like I said. That is the absence of peace, the absence of being calm, right? Because it's noisy, it's loud, chaotic. There is no war. So to know peace, we first have to know what war is. What, all of this, like the military going to war, okay? So you cannot have peace without having first that to kind of compare it to. It's very, very interesting that even the definitions have the opposite of what they are. Reliable, able to be trusted. So you can't really know what reliability is without first knowing what kind of something that you can trust, somebody that you can kind of depend on, right? That's reliability. So somebody that, say, you can't rely on, you have to experience that first to be able to know kind of what is reliable. You have to know the opposite of it. Now you might be thinking to yourself, do I though? Do I really have to know what the opposite of reliability is to be able to experience reliability? Not now. But when the word first got defined, reliability, to be able to be reliable, you had to know first what somebody who was not reliable, what that looked like, to be able to know what reliability was. Because we know the definition now, we know what it is, we can kind of avoid that. But not back then, not when it was first being defined, not when reliability was first being defined. Somebody had to experience what was unreliable. And sadly, those of us now will still experience people who are unreliable. Just because we have a definition of what reliability is does not mean that we won't know what, we won't experience that. But when it happens, we know what to call it. That person was unreliable, was untrustworthy. I can't depend on him or her. We know what it is now because we have a definition that we can attach that to. That experience goes back to wisdom, right? Experience. We know when we can depend on somebody and when we can't. Freedom. It's the big one. Hindrance, restraint, state of being imprisoned or enslaved. Interesting. Because we would not know what freedom is without first having been imprisoned or enslaved, or being hindered, or restrained. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. And then last, honest. Free of deceit. Free of deceit. So we wouldn't know what honesty was unless we first knew what deceit was. Being deceptive, lying. So all of these words that I just brought up have pretty much the opposite in most of the definitions of what's counter that, right? Because it's saying state of not being that. It's interesting that to be able to define peace, we have to say that there's no disturbance, that there's no war. That to be able to say freedom, We have to say that there's no hindrance or restraint. We have to know what the stuff is, right? And the bad stuff in there is part of the definition of the good stuff, because it's part of us. Our experience on a whole, our experience, whether good or bad, develops who we are as a person. So yes, when the bad things happen, it sucks. And it's not fun. It's never fun to experience the bad. But there is a silver lining. And the silver lining is we are building our character. We are becoming stronger. We are learning how to be wise and how to be honest and strong in the face of the bad. So I thank you guys for watching. I thank you guys for subscribing, every one of you guys. And for those of you that enjoyed this video, please like and share it. Share it with your friends. And until next week, just remember, God loves you.